Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Infinite Regression. Here we are in eternity, and here we are in Minecraft. Now, I have an intention tonight. The last time I was doing this on a weekend and experiencing good weekendy times, one of the things that I touched upon is the fact, you know, okay, let me take one thing at a time. There was just a traffic jam in my brain, and it converged upon my mouth, and I couldn't say anything because there were three competing thoughts trying to get out at the same time. So I've been saying an undue number of nice things about Satan lately. Like it's grown in absurdity, and I will not deny that this is the case. You could point it out to me. You could say, "Hey," you say like, "My sweet Satan," uh, like way more than you really ought, and I don't know that there is a valid argument against that. I've been saying it more. Now, granted, I do have one of my students who is doing their research paper on the satanic panic of the 1980s, which is fantastic. Fantastic topic. I lived through the satanic panic of the 1980s. It's why, quite frankly, it is one of the main reasons why I did not play Dungeons and Dragons when I was younger, and all of my friends, literally all of my friends, played D&D. Anyway, but if all of my friends jumped off a cliff into a fiery pit with Satan, would I do it with them? Yes, because that's where the good music is. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. I've said it many times. I may have said it on this channel before, but if given the choice between spending an eternity listening to like, "Ooh Jesus, I'm weirdly romantic about you," and like "Hail Satan," chugga 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 chugga, like I'd take number two. Like you can rock out to that. You can do a lot of things with that. It's a good time. And also you have the assurance that the men who made that music, and yes, is more than likely men. Um, yeah, Lita Ford, more songs about Satan, please. As if she's the only woman in metal. That's sexist. Anyway, regardless. Um, but the fact is that I have been saying an undue number of positive things about Satan lately. I just have a student researching it. I've been helping that student do the research because I'm really interested in that topic, because it reminds me of certain things from my childhood and the religious reactions to them that members of my family, especially my parents, had at the time. So it's certainly worth revisiting, and it's a fascinating time period to look back on. Quite frankly, the first time that we proposed a strategy gaming club at my high school, which I am now the sponsor of the strategy gaming club. I help run that club. I'm the faculty sponsor. Anyway, so the yeah, the thing is, when we first proposed it, I had multiple different groups of students coming up to me specifically. Some of these students I didn't even know; they weren't even my students. But they were saying, "Hey, would you be comfortable sponsoring uh, a club in which we can play D&D?" And I said, "That sounds awesome. I've always wanted to play D&D." Like, unfortunately, by the time I wanted to play D&D, my choices were like play it with young people who were still playing, uh, end of list, because like uh, the I didn't know anyone my age who was still playing it. Uh, yeah, my nieces and nephews, some of my nieces and nephews played, but it always felt weird to like invade on their game and be like, "Hey, I'm your uncle and I'm going to play the D&D." Now these people are adults, and we should really have a session sometime. It'd be a hoot, be a good time. Anyway, so if I say things about Satan, know the following. Like, number one, I am not a Satanist, although this brings us to point number two that I wish to spend the majority of my time on this evening, and that is, let's see, mine is getting big enough to where the back wall is difficult to see, and so I employ minecart to get there. As it should be. Ra. Yes, I have broken an iron minecart with mine bare hands, just like I do in real life. Anyway, so yeah, the statement that I made, I don't know if it was last weekend or the weekend before, who cares, frankly? Unimportant. Not at all attached to the idea itself, but I made a comment that, I hate it when they disapparate right when I'm going to kill them. I made a comment that it makes more sense that there be an ultimate evil in the universe more than it makes sense that there is an ultimate good. And I know that that is a controversial statement, but I would like to back it up with a lengthy philosophical discussion about the problem of evil, because I think that the problem of evil is one of the most fascinating philosophical dilemmas. If you are a religious person, then you might be saying to yourself, what problem of evil? I mean, obviously, it's a problem that evil exists, but God's going to take care of that because the evil are going to burn. Wait, that would be specifically if you're a Christian. But then again, I am in the United States, and most people who are religious are Christian, which is why you get so much tyranny of the majority, in which people are like, y'all don't mind if we just make this super Christian, right? And, people be like, but we're Buddhists over here. And they're like, yeah, but you're a minority, so we're just going to trample on you. Anyway, just imagining Hindus being like, why are you putting the 10 Commandments on the, steps of the courthouse? And they'd be like, because everyone believes these things, silly. Like, that's the number one thing that people say. And then, of course, the first 4 commandments are like, thou shalt believe specifically in the God of Christianity. Well, I mean, it's obviously comes from the Jewish Bible originally, or the hold on. I need to come up with some way to remember this because I get it wrong all the time. The difference between the Torah and the Talmud. Now, I think the Torah is the Old Testament, and the Talmud is Jewish history, Jewish religion. The Torah is 5 books of Moses. Okay, yeah. So the Torah contains not all books from the Old Testament, but then again, there are things from the Old Testament, depending on whose Old Testament you're reading, does it contain the Apocrypha? And when you say Apocrypha, what do you mean? And what books specifically are you talking about, which were not contained in the original? And when you say original, which one do you mean? It's problematic when you get into, interpretations of biblical origins, because obviously there is a scholarly outside of things from which you can make very firm pronouncements and say, well, this is what, from a scholarly perspective, we know to be the case. But then again, nobody is, going to church on Sunday and saying, like, hey, preach it, brother, read to us from the American Journal of Religious Studies or whatever. It's, yeah. People get excited about the theology, not the sociology or the history, quite frankly, unless you're Mormon, in which case that is another discussion unto itself. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, the approaches to these things are very different. Just be aware of that. When I talk about religion, I'm always talking about it from the perspective of, sociological, historical, social, and I am never talking about it in terms of what thou must believe, because first of all, as a teacher, that's the way I have to approach it all the time. I could be fired if I were to say things like, there is no God but God, which is as dumb a thing as you could say as possible. There is no Stephen but Stephen. It's like, no, there's like a lot of concepts of God on the earth, and the fact that people be going around calling God, like the God of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which all share the same God, technically. From a religious studies perspective, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam share the same God. It is the God which made a covenant with Abraham. That's why they are the Abrahamic religions. I mean, I did not invent this. I'm just merely reporting on facts, so don't get all upset that I said that you believe in the same God as them there terrorists over there. Like, ugh. Made up person in my brain that is objecting to this channel, even though I have zero viewership, intentionally zero viewership. Anyway, I don't know what to say about you. Okay. So I make no pronouncements about what you should believe. But then again, anytime I skirt the edge of things that I actually do believe, or don't believe, more accurately, because, like, if you say what you do believe, then people tend to respect it. But if you say what you don't believe, then people who do believe that are like, hey! But I will tell you this, like, any belief system which requires other people to believe it in order for it to maintain its credibility is dubious to begin with. Like, you don't have to have 1 million people believe the sky is blue for the sky to be blue. It will be blue. It has been blue. It was blue before anyone had evolved the eyeball potential of seeing it. It was blue before the reference, which is the word blue itself, was attached to the referent, the thing to which the reference is made, which is, of course, the very concept of blueness, as a demarcation of a specific wavelength in the spectrum of visible light. Anyway, so yes, these things, when you butt up against things that people believe from a religious perspective, because religion is a matter of faith, people tend to become uncomfortable, because if it is a matter of faith and you say out loud, like, hey, I don't believe very basic things that form the ground upon which your belief system stands, then people start to get very nervous. but I'm not promoting my lack of belief as the only way to live. Uh, anyway, like it's it's a problematic relationship. Let's just say that. Like, I when I'm teaching, I can't be too genuine about those things. I can't tell people exactly what I think and feel and mean. But I also I love talking about religion. I really do. It is one of my favorite topics. Um, anyway, what I want to talk about tonight is what I alluded to earlier, which really does touch a lot on belief systems themselves, and there are numerous doctrines and dogmas when it comes to the concept of an ultimate evil, which in the Judeo-Christian tradition you would call a devil. Um, so yeah, that's a devil or a demon. Anyway, demonology. This is what we're dipping our toes into. Well, no, actually, that is not entirely true. So yeah, what I said before about it making more sense for there to be an ultimate evil in the universe than it does for there to be an ultimate good. What I was referencing with that statement is the very well known problem of evil. The problem of evil, if you are not aware, and why would you not be aware? Like, we have the knowledge of ages at our fingertips, and this is a very oh jeez, I hate these guys. Anyway, die, 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 Lavinia, die, and with thy father, with thee thy father's shame. Hold up. God. They are relentless. I keep hitting shift when I mean to hit control, and it makes me kneel rather than in trouble with these freaking things. There's way too many of them. Oh, I thought I killed you. Dingus! I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate the designer who invented the concept of you. Wait, are they hedged in by train tracks? Because the other ones got on the other side of the train tracks. Anyway, regardless, that's. I mean, I guess there's train track room, and anyway, let's get back on track. Come on, Mr. Guy, Mr. Person, who is the voice, the disembodied voice talking to a non-existent audience. Anyway, so the problem of evil. I will touch on this very briefly. But the problem of evil is the idea that because there is evil in the world, this is an issue for the concept of oh, did I run into a ravine? I think I did. Anyway, because there is evil in the world. Okay, if I'm going to go back in there, I'm going to need armor. Because there is evil in the world, this is a problematic proposition for the existence of a benevolent God. Now, as our founding fathers would have reminded us, it is not necessarily a slap in the face of the concept of there being any existence of God, but it is a problematic issue if you are going to be arguing in favor of the concept of a benevolent God, a God who is aware of humanity and aware of individuals within humanity and is willing, able, and in fact very much involved in the day-to-day lives of humans, in the answering of their prayers and the providing of blessings. Anyway, so like that is your standard issue benevolent God. That is, the God to which most people in America pray when they pray. That's what we're talking about. So when I say that the concept of evil is problematic to the existence of such a God, is this problem of evil, which I believe was first posed in its most well-known form by Epicurus. Hold on, give me 1 second. This is the well-known version of this is the philosopher Hume summarizing. Hold on, Greek philosopher, Hume, anyway, so David Hume, the philosopher, summarized the problem of evil thus, and you may have heard this in your lifetime. So, is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. And, that is, there are three typical claims about the Judeo-Christian God: that he is omnipotent, that he is omniscient, and that he is omnipresent. Anyway, so, yeah, is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent, meaning he bears ill will toward humanity. Is he both able and willing? Then from whence comes evil? And it's been taken steps further, where people have said, okay, if God knows about evil and doesn't cure it, then he is not. Doesn't fix it, then he is not benevolent. If he does not know about evil, then he is not omniscient. Certainly, if he if he knows about it and does not do it as a matter of principle, then perhaps he is not, beneficent. He's not kind and just toward humanity. And if he is, willing but not able, then he is not omnipotent. It calls into question the, and if evil exists everywhere, then you could also, there's an argument which follows about the omnipresence of God, or very specifically of, oh, yeah, that's right, I was coming to do armor, because I might need some. I'm going to do iron armor. I know that I could do diamond armor, because I guess I have a few diamonds. Plop. But I'm tired of these freaking, what they called, silverfish attacking me, and killing my diamond armor. Like, they destroyed an entire set of diamond armor, and I'm still bitter about that. But iron, I've got iron to spare, obviously, so let's get it on. I mean, seriously, let's get it on. Let's take this and put it on. Anyway, so the problem of evil is that, to put it very simply, is that, oh, yes, I'm going to put iron bars on my head. Anyway, or iron ingots. Uh, to put it very simply, like, how can you claim that there is both a just and loving God in the universe, and yet so many people suffer so very often, so very badly, all the things? And that's a good question. It makes me happy that people are paying attention. Because ask the hard questions. Don't just take what you are given. I find it telling that the vast majority of the world's religionists are people who have inherited the belief systems of their parents. And so if you believe what your parents believe, well, of course, duh, your parents are absolutely right. But wait, what if I'm saying that to, children of Christian parents and Buddhist parents and Muslim parents and, I don't know, all the parents? Oh, I was hoping for a real cave system. Oh well. Maybe there is one somewhere back in here, but we'll find it. We'll find out. At least to get a little bit of iron. Yeah. Our founding fathers were deists, which is to say that they believed in the concept of a creator God, but not in the concept of a personal God, of a God who, can help you find your car keys, which is, that's a straw man argument. I don't think that, while it is a very common thing that, like, we lost our car keys and we just, in our hearts we said a little, hey, Jesus, G's, easy G's, cheese man, you're the cheese man, Jesus of Nazareth. Okay, this is very blasphemous. Keeping it, I don't edit, I'm sorry. Jesus of Nazareth, Gouda and Brie. Anyway, so we continue. The problem of evil, the deists believe they solved it by claiming that, much like a watchmaker or a clockmaker, I believe is the more common. Watchmaker is the Richard Dawkins gets all on about the blind watchmaker. Anyway, but yeah, the clockmaker god that what seems like it may not actually be, and I'm willing to be shown evidence that very many of our founding fathers were deists. They did not believe in a God who was involved in the day-to-day lives of humans. They did not believe in a God that you could really pray to and receive guidance or blessings from, because in their view, God built a clock, which is, our physical universe, and then set it in motion, wound it up, and then left the room, and sort of left humanity to fend for themselves, to find what works best for them, which, interesting, like, really, there's quite a bit of libertarian approach to that, which is fascinating. I really need to read at some point. I have a copy of the Jefferson Bible, which is a really fascinating document, which is it's a Bible compiled, edited by Thomas Jefferson, and it's is conspicuously not as big as whatever family Bible. Certainly not as big as Joe Biden's family Bible, which like Stephen Colbert jokingly said, like, does yours have extra books that ours doesn't have? Like, does your Bible have extra commandments that we don't know about? Anyway, yeah. Seriously, just stop what you're doing right now and just Google Biden Family Bible, and you will be greeted by the biggest freaking Bible you've ever freaking seen. Like, you'd think you've seen a big leather-bound family Bible. My God, the Bidens, like, they bake the cake, and then people come and they say, can we have some cake? And no, the Bidens, they take the cake. They're like, we made this for us. It's our cake. The rest of y'all back off. Biden cake. Biden Bible cake is take you one big old scoop of Bible. Like, just, you know how you do heaping tablespoons? This is just a heaping heap. Like, make a heap of Bible, but then, like, heap that Bible heap up. Like, heap the heap. That's back when I was a 1980s hip-hop artist. Heapity heap, 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 heap. I'm the heap, and I'm here to say that I do the rhymes in the usual way. Why were there so many 80s hip-hop groups that were like, this is my name, and I'm here to say that I do a thing in an unusual way. Except, like, you're doing it in the most normal way, which is the way that, like, is so common that I can refer to that as a style, like, 20, 30, 40, 50, like, how long has it been since the early 1980s? It's been 40 years. I was born 79, so, yeah, that means that, in as much as I, like, yeah, people like to share how old they are on the internet, right? That's not problematic. Actually, I think it'd be problematic if I was female and attractive. But, all I am is male and devilishly handsome. Anyway, so, yeah. Back to the problem of evil. Yeah, the Jefferson Bible, Thomas Jefferson redid the New Testament, and he took a bunch of stuff out. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, if you are going to, like, re-edit, like, remix, but shorter, because most remixes are, like, way longer. Like, they just go for 75 minutes on just, like, either some ambient, like, wow, 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 and it's like that for 35 minutes, and then finally the actual song kicks in. Don't break my heart, my achy yeah, see, I was referring to the well-known 12-inch version DJ Fancy Pants remix of Achy Breaky Heart, made by the father of Hannah Montana. Anyway, God, that song is terrible. Look, I don't care if you think there's an ultimate evil in the universe or not, but you have to admit that song is, like, garbage. Achy Breaky Heart, like, blech. By the way, though, I heavily and heartily recommend, if you are a fan of country from the 1990s, Hot Country Nights they're basically the Spinal Tap of country music, only it's, like, Spinal Tap, those guys are not musicians, they're actors playing the roles of musicians, as Christopher Guest famously said, um, you know, we go on stage and we pretend to be a rock band, and our fans are there in the audience pretending they like us. Um, Fantastic. Anyway, yeah, Hot Country Nights. That's Nights spelled with a K. They do. It's Dirks Bentley Dierks. It's probably Dirks. I don't know that I've ever heard it out loud. I've read the name, and so I'm probably mispronouncing it wildly. Anyway, but that guy who's a modern country singer that I don't really care enough about to look into, but his band Hot Country Nights is like, you know, because the 90s there was massive boom in the popularity of country music. You know, you had your John Michaels Montgomery, your Alan's Jackson, but mostly, and let's not pretend that this isn't true, your Garth Brooks. Yeah, that's right. I know you remember him as Chris Gaines. So do we all. But, like, ultimately, he's Garth Brooks. Anyway, so, yeah, the Jefferson Bible, what did he edit out? I'm very scattershot right now because I am enjoying my weekend, people. What are you doing with your life? You're watching a video that's like, who knows? This video is going to end up being like 3.5 hours long. And I'll still post it, and I will not edit it. Like, and then for anybody, like the 3 people who have been holding out any hope that I will post any half-decent content, because there are about 3 people that actually look in on these things. Anyway, they're gonna see this and just, like, at least one of them, their faith is gonna waver, and they're gonna be like, I don't know about this anymore. But, yeah. I've lost my own point. Oh, about how scattershot I am. Yes, as evidenced by what my brain just did, forgetting what I was talking about. Being rather scattershot, and, like, so I'm hopping back into things that I was talking about. The Jefferson Bible, you know, as I am actually going to talk about the Jefferson Bible now. So the Jefferson Bible, Thomas Jefferson, who was a deist, which means that more than likely, and I'm not his biographer, so don't quote me on this, more than likely he didn't spend a lot of time in church. Deists were not, a lot of them were not very avid churchgoers because they were like, yeah, if you have a relationship with God, that's your own business. A lot of people see the deists as like proto-agnostics, which should talk about agnosticism sometime. Not right now. Because I feel like it gets a bad rep, and actually it's one of the best terms in all of religious and non-religious concepts. The idea of agnosticism as, like, you know, what the Gnostics have. I don't have that. Which is absolutely a reasonable thing to say, given what I know about the Gnostics, which is mainly taken from the book that Bart Ehrman has the Gnostic Gospel of Judas, which is really fascinating. Bart Ehrman, a generally fascinating man, one of the great biblical experts in the world. If you want to learn where I learn things about the Bible, in addition to, like, having read it several times, which is, like, my God, my students, the number of students that I have who go to church. All right, I'm doing a lot of talking. I need water. Hold up. Okay. Jeez. You know, if I had a shred of decency or shame, and I have neither, apparently, this is what we've learned. Um, but yeah, that's a good sound. If I had a shred of decency or shame, I would have paused the recording in addition to the game. I didn't even pause the game. I just walked away from it. Um, all right, because I make good YouTube content. This is what I do. You know, to like ask Michael Jordan why he Michael Jordan so hard. To ask Adele why is she Adele so hard. She Adele's hard. Like, have you seen that video where people are like, I Adele pretty hard, and she's like, you know who really Adele's? Me in disguise, and then you find out that it's actually Adele, and then you're like, I as we've learned, no one Adele's harder than Adele. So let's get into this probably evil, but I think I never finished the Jefferson Bible comment. He just took all of the things out of the Bible that he believed were unsupportable by logic and reason, because he was, of course, very influenced by the philosophers of the Enlightenment. Anyway, so yeah, that is very, very. There's a clear through line there. Is what I'm getting at. Anyway, so yeah, I think most Christians who spend a lot of time trying to parse out what our founding fathers meant when they wrote everything they wrote, which, like, frankly, we have a Supreme Court for that. And actually, like, that's only the role of the literalist Supreme Court members, because you have the view that, number one, that you are interpreting, and this is the literalist point of view, that you are interpreting what the Constitution of the United States meant when it said what it said, as opposed to a more progressive view, which is what could it mean when the Constitution says what it says? Could it do crazy things like provide white rights to women and minorities and, members of the LGBTQ community who are a minority? So why? It's because minority is a euphemism and a catch-all term for, like, oh, the people that's not white. That's who we mean, because they're both class-wise, and obviously this is generalization and not a statement about whether or not there is wealth in minority communities, because certainly there is, but, like, your average member of a minority group in America comes from poverty. And that's institutional. That's not the fault of anyone. I taught students about redlining this week, and then told them that it's a practice that still continues, because one of the hardest things to prove in the world of attempting to prove anything in a court of law is attempting to prove, oh, that's right, I need pickaxes, attempting to prove intent when it comes to discrimination. Fascinating study where employment was it employment or housing? It was one of the two, or bank loans. God, it could have been several things. I'm about to cite a study that I don't know what it says. No, there's a famous case. Give me a dang minute. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, yeah, interesting. There have been a number of studies on this, but it was in fact a study on bank loans. So they submitted because bank loans are, like there's obviously your Susan Ormans and people will tell you there's good debt and bad debt and whatnot. And, going into debt for a home or for property can be a very good thing, help you rise out of poverty. As a matter of fact, the 40 acres and a mule initial idea of reparations would have provided tremendous leverage to the African American community. And one could very clearly argue that, like, uh, 40 acres of land, even, if it's not a prime plot of land, eventually, like, American land is getting used and raising in value considerably. And so, if even sold for a profit, represents a, you know, uh, what could be a very large step in wealth for a formerly impoverished person. Um, and if held on to, and used for purposes like, agriculture, industry, etc., like it can provide other streams of income while maintaining the asset as well. Anyway, land is a very helpful thing to have. So, uh, yeah, and as a matter of fact, this may have been with mortgages. I would need to look further, but I'm unwilling at this point. So let's just say that it's a conventional bank loan, just because that's probably the safest route to go. So in the study, um, they presented candidates for a bank loan, um, and to a number of banks, and they would provide two exactly 100% identical loan requests. And the only thing differing on these requests is that one would have, a very stereotypically white sounding name, you know, John and Barbara Smith, and it's like, I bet these are Beaver Cleaver's parents. Wait, no, then their last name would be Cleaver. Just the way I said it. Like, John and Barbara Smith live in a 1950s paradise where neither of them has heard about. I don't know. Everything my mind is thinking of is absolutely terrible. Because the joke was going to be that they haven't heard of, like, just filthy, unspeakable acts. and that's not, let's not say those on YouTube on a place that my students might potentially hear. But then again, like, in as much as my students are definitely the only people who are going to hear the fact that, like, now implanted in their minds is the fact that I know names for unspeakable acts, their brain is going to be like, well, which ones? uh, you'd be surprised. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, so, um, yeah, all the things. Study of discrimination. And, so when you're John and Barbara Smith, were submitting identical loan applications to, Jamal and Shaniqua Johnson. I don't know, is it racist for me to make that as an assumption? I have known black people named both Jamal and Shaniqua. And quite frankly, when I met a black lady named Shaniqua, I was like, I almost feel racist for saying your own given name because, Like, uh, Shaniqua is like the name that people who are making fun of black names go to. Is like a touchstone of weird name-based racism. I don't know. Anyway, it's a common thing. But yeah, I um very briefly met a black woman named Shaniqua. It's not like we were, best friends. I'm not on her Christmas card list, but she was in fact a real human being who really did exist. And like I always felt like that name was created as a, as a poke, as a, little stab at the African American naming trend of coming up with some very unique names. And quite frankly, as someone who has to learn, like between 60 and 90 new names every semester, no, actually, it's not that many. It's usually about 60. It's usually about 60 new names that I have to learn every single semester. Yeah, there's a growing trend of everybody, white parents, Native American parents, Hispanic parents, African American parents. I guess Asian parents to a certain extent, of the very few Asian parents we've had. Anyway, but yeah, the sample size for my statement is, of course, my own experience, which is, you know, not lengthy enough to really say anything definitively. So take it with a very large grain of salt. But it seems that more and more parents, regardless of race, are giving more unique names to children because they are like that is the thing. And it's fun because at the start of every semester I'm like, all right, I'm going to mispronounce some of your names because it is the first time I'm seeing some of them in print. Be like, I could show you words that you would not know how to pronounce because I very literally have a degree in knowing. Oh, in knowing words that your average human doesn't know how to pronounce and will never use in a sentence. But it's part of my job to know these things and lord it over people and make them feel inadequate and talk about their grammar and punctuation behind their backs. Oh, by the way, if you wondered if English teachers get together in groups and talk about other people's grammar, and we're talking about students, colleagues, administrators, it doesn't matter. If you send an email and there is a comma out of place, you just be prepared for the English. Maybe it's just our English faculty because we love to complain. We are the whitest bunch of whiners ever. And I don't know if it's just our faculty or it's the nature of English majors. We have a problem with everything because everything could be better. And better if we do it more like English teachers because we're the most important ones. Oh, man. Know your own flaws. Know your biases. Acknowledge them. There's really no sidestepping it. That's part of being an adult. Anyway, yeah. English teachers, we come after you. Let's see. Let me get this thing back on track. I will definitely have left a thought in there covered. Just something I intended to say that I did not say. But I will just plow on forward because we've barely touched on the meat and potatoes of what I intend to touch on tonight in terms of the problem of evil, and the problem of evil specifically being, you know, not like problematic for the existence of an ultimate good in the universe, but an absolute zero effect on the existence of an absolute evil, or yeah, of an ultimate evil, not absolute. Very different things. Ultimate, not absolute. Anyway, so yeah, the problem of evil, that evil exists, and is it the God can't can't take care of evil, you know, and of course, like, if you are a Christian person, or a religious person upon whose, like, Christians very specifically, and I feel less so than Jews or Muslims. I could be wrong, but I mean, I have indicated before that I have not known nearly enough Jewish people in my lifetime, because I am fascinated by many aspects of the religion and the culture, and I, you know, want to know more by association. You know, it's not a missionizing religion, so I'm certainly not asking to be, you know, like, brought into the fold, by having my fold snipped off. That's hey, high five. That's good. That's good. I'm doing well, killing it right now. If not for anybody else, then certainly for me. Yeah. So, but I feel like, you know, Judaism and Islam are less intent on proving that God is kind, you know, because if you are just, it does not always turn out kindly. You know, think about court, a place of justice, you know, and it may be that, like, you wish for an element of mercy, that, like, hey, you weren't going that far over the speed limit, but then the court provides justice, and you end up paying the fine, even though you didn't want to pay the fine. You end up paying the fine, but, you know, justice has been served, and you're not happy about it, you know. So that is the circumstance under which there can be a just God, but that some would argue in favor of a just God, but not a benevolent God. And it seems more a feature of Judaism and Islam than it is of Christianity. Of course, I'm not speaking from vast knowledge. This is, again, you know, unfounded observation. So take it with a heaping dose of salt. Like, just take the top off the salt shaker and tip it. Like, that's how much salt. Anyway, so yeah, the problem of evil is specifically problematic for Christianity, which really hangs its hat upon a benevolent God, and, like, the benevolent aspect of God, the incarnation of God's benevolence in the figure of Jesus. And so, you know, the problem of evil is much more prescient for Christians than it is for Jews or Muslims, which is not to say that it is not at all of importance, or that it does not touch upon the belief systems of Christians or of Jews or Muslims. Now, granted, you could say, like, oh, what about polytheistic religions? Well, polytheistic religions have a beautiful idea, and I really love the way that it plays out in Gilgamesh. Now, to say it's a beautiful idea is to place no value whatsoever on its truth or falsehood. Um, I am not a polytheist myself. Really, not my jam. I won't say specifically how I lean, but yeah, let's just say that it's not polytheistic. Um, and you can take that in a number of ways. But anyway, the beauty of polytheism is that you can have just multiple different types of gods. You can have tricksters who perpetrate a great number of evils upon humanity, out of sheer Schadenfreude, and you can have gods which are not malevolent in that they bear ill will toward humanity in general, but that they are a force which brings no good to humanity. They just are an unmoved mover of their own, a force for which there is no reckoning. Anyway, so and that is not, like it may be perceived from the perspective of humans as malevolent, but it is not in and of itself malevolent. So yeah, that is very much in the eye of the beholder. I hear cat digging, and that means that very soon it will smell very, very badly in this room. This cat is so small, so dainty, so cute. Think of a porcelain cat. Our cat is more like porcelain cat-ish than that. Like, you're thinking of an actual porcelain cat, or maybe you even Googled it and were like, what is he talking about, a porcelain cat? Anyway, but our cat is more of a porcelain cat than that, and yet her poops are obscene. They are a crime against man and nature. Anyway, so yeah, polytheism, you can have an embodiment of an ultimate evil that is, hello, I'm making content for the internet. Is it keeping you awake? Hold up. I'm going to converse with my daughter. Give me 1 second. Unpause. Yay. We unpaused it. Let's leave the negaverse. Anyway, my daughter is not feeling well. So, taking care of that. When your daughter doesn't feel well, you stop what you're doing, you help your daughter. What are you, a monster? Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, polytheism, you can have an ultimate embodiment of evil and an ultimate embodiment of good, and actually several iterations of evil, like a creator / destroyer who, created it, but then must one day fold it all back up and put it away. Or the part that I love from Gilgamesh is that you can have a disagreement among gods about the best course of action, because from the story of Utnapishtim, as many people have pointed out, the story of Noah from the Bible is problematic. And here's why. This is one of many reasons why the story of Noah is problematic. Aside from all of the scientific perspectives, like, the one that says very accurately, well, there's no evidence that that ever happened. Um, and it's, yeah, there's really not. And also, like, water cycles are a closed system, so where did all this water come from? Anyway, and where did it go after it was done? Scientific perspective, it's dubious for a number of reasons. But the real problem when I'm talking about the problem of evil with the Noahic flood, which I believe is plagiarized from the earlier flood of Utnapishtim, the recorded earlier as a story, was recorded earlier. Like if Moses is the source of the Pentateuch, which I remember what I was saying before I went away, that like my students know so much less. Like my most religious students know so much less about the Bible than I do. That it's terrifying. But they know so much less about the Bible than you would think a person who is living their life according to it would know. Like I told the story of Sodom and Gomorrah just this week, because somebody was asking about sodomy, and I was like, well, you know where that comes from? And they're like, no. And I was like, well, you believe in the Bible. Like, how do you not know this very, very entertaining story? Like, it's a hoot. It's a real hoot. It's I don't know why I say hoot more when I'm having a good weekend. I do say hoot. Suddenly I'm from Minnesota, aren't I, Mr. Lundgaard? Anyway, actually that's Fargo. That's North Dakota. Anyway, so. Yeah, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, very hilarious. I'd cover it, except I don't have time. But yeah, so the story of Noah and his flood is that like everybody was evil. Everybody was evil. And therefore God had to destroy all of them except for Noah, his wife, whose name I don't believe we know, the typical biblical fashion, like, these are the women, they don't matter. Anyway, because the men are the godly ones. Anyway, so, Noah, his wife, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their respective wives. Those are Noah's sons. See, I know the names of Noah's sons, and most of my students barely know what Noah is famous for. And it's like, regardless of whether or not you believe it is a theological concept, it's part of the culture. Like, it is known, Khaleesi. Like, so, how you say, in polytheism, so in the Abrahamic religions, God was like, everyone on earth is wicked, and so I am, like, and it repented God that he hath made man, is what it says in the King James Version of the Bible. You can look it up. Genesis chapter 11, if I'm not mistaken. So, of the King James Version of the Bible, which is the version I was raised with, if you're looking in some NSRV, some NIV, you know, God help you if it's one of those, like, I'm written in just regular folk speak. Like, it just says, like, at the start of it, there was a whole lot of nothing, but then God done came and he was like, what if there was something over here and a little more something over there? And that's how he did it. And he saw it and he was like, damn, that's good. God started turning into Matthew McConaughey at the end, like, yeah, that's real nice right there. All right, all right, all right. That's some quality work over there. Yeah, that's. Hey, you ladies looking for a planet to live on? Yeah, I got you a good one right here. This is some quality stuff. You know, you got a JKL. You got a JKL. You got to just keep living. You ladies want to live on a smooth planet. You want to live on a good planet. I got this one right here. It's called Earth. You dig that? So, I'm getting so very blasphemous. I really hope my mother never finds this channel because it will result in, first of all, a lot of disappointment from her. But in addition, um, it will result in, you know, just a lot of, like, why would you say that? That's. Can you delete it? You're hurting your family. Anyway, that's sad. That actually is very sad. Like, I feel bad now. I feel bad that I 100% am going to post this. No questions, no edits. Even the part where I tell that I'm going to post it is going to be posted. Um, anyway, you watch because, like, the three of you who actually are dumb enough to be watching this. Yes, I'm talking about you. No, not you. The other one. Yeah, you. No, Preston, it's not you. I'm. Oh, son of a diddly. Now I have to try and kill it with my S word. They don't. Like, swords are barely effective on them. Because half the time you get that, unless you're the right distance, you get that little dingus, like, meh. Little half swing. Anyway. So the Noahic flood, like, God just was sorry that he ever thought of the concept of humans, and he just was like, I'm gonna destroy them all except for these ones. And and that's a huge problem for so many reasons, because, like, number one, if God created man and he created them in such a way that they, like, rebelled against him hard and, like, were just terrible, that shows a few things. Like, number one, that God is, creating flawed designs. Like, that's, like, it flies in the face of, the very concept of a Judeo-Christian God, because he's supposed to be perfect. But if you're creating things very imperfectly to the point where you have to wad them up and throw them away and start all over again, like, then is that not flawed design? But also the fact that he couldn't foretell this outcome from his own design. It's a slap in the face of God's omnipotence, or omniscience. His omnipotence for the fact that he created such flawed beings in the first place, that he was incapable of because if even the Leibnizian perspective of like if God could have done better, he would have done better, and therefore, of course, the greatest book ever written slaps that idea around. So I won't tell you what it is. You're gonna have to look it up on your own. Which book, which is hilarious, incredibly fun to read, thrilling from top to bottom, entertaining, thought-provoking. The only book I've ever laughed out loud to when reading by myself in an empty house. It's powerful, potent stuff, and it takes this idea that like this is the greatest of all possible worlds. Hint, hint, hintity, hint, hint. And, that if it could have been better, then it would have been better because God would have done better. And then, God being the powerful being that he is, he being, that's what being all-powerful is all about. If you're an all-powerful being, the being that you're being is what's its being all about. Being. That's basically the chorus to a very popular song in Cambodia in the late 1990s. Kid you not, that is real. Oh, what am I doing? Over here, I don't have pickaxes. Thought I had pickaxes, but I don't have pickaxes. How am I going to do any mining without pickaxes? Anyway. I can't believe it's taken me this long to get this point out, but I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. The point is that in Gilgamesh, which I believe, and many people believe, including most of your biblical scholars, that it is the origin of the biblical story of the flood. Anyway, but in that version, there are multiple gods, and, the God who said, let's destroy all of them, he was not the all-knowing, all-benevolent God. He was certainly powerful, but he wasn't all-knowing, all-benevolent, and that it was the all-knowing, all-benevolent God which was really sorry that all of mankind was set to be destroyed. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to do some trickery, because we gods all acknowledge that we are not going to that we are not going to reveal to humans the fact that they're about to be destroyed. But Ea, being the wisest of gods, went over to a fence near Utnapishtim's house, or around Utnapishtim's house. Utnapishtim was near a fence himself when this was said. And, so Utnapishtim over there standing by a fence, he is a regular mortal at this point. Spoiler alert. Anyway, and how did I not get any iron? And Utnapishtim, standing there, the god Ea comes and whispers to the fence, like, "Hey, fence. Hey, how's it going, fence? I can't tell the people this, 'cause it's strictly forbidden, fence. But, we're gonna flood the earth and kill everyone. So you need to, don't tell any humans, fence. 'Cause it's a secret." And so, Ea kept the pact of the gods because he did not directly tell a human that they were going to flood the earth, but he saved the seed for the continuation of much more clever if you're talking about it specifically from the perspective of it being written rather than being, recorded as actual events which actually happened, which, you believe whatever you want to believe on that. But yeah, these guys, I'm so tired of you and you and you. How bad? Not too bad on my armor. There was like a while ago where I was mining and it was just constant silverfish. Anyways, so because polytheism can have multiple gods who don't even agree with each other, which is a fascinating concept, that it would have to be a scenario in which, like, none of these gods is perfect, because if they were all perfect, then that agreement would be, it would have to happen. There would just be an agreement with the gods. But you get a pantheon which is, put together with all of their tendencies and, to counterbalance each other, that they as a collective are perfect and the perfect. But then again, like, you don't even really need them to be perfect. You just need them to be in a polytheistic concept. And because, these are all gods which are, evident in signs which are interpreted as such by the believer, then, like, existence is pretty easy to deal with for such deities, from that perspective, and that, like, you can't argue against the existence of Bertrand Russell. Well, you can't prove the non-existence of Bertrand Russell's teapot, and therefore it's an unfalsifiable claim. And so unfalsifiable claims are, bedrock to many religious claims. Things which are like, well, you can't disprove it, and you must take it on faith. And that's where it lies. Oh man, what if I meant the double meaning? Like, that's where the metaphorical space in which it resides, but that's where it also prevaricates and provides falsehoods on an intentional basis. Ooh. Yeah. That is ridiculous. I'm a ridiculous person. I fully admit this. I am aware. If you're thinking to yourself, does he know? I know. Like, I've met me before. I've spent more time with me than any of you have. So, yeah, I get it. I get it. Anyway, so yeah, that's for polytheism, and for a lot of, like Buddhism, the practice is polytheistic because there is no inherent God concept, and it derived from a polytheistic society. It's very common for Buddhists to be polytheistic. Thinking of other major religions and how I know, I don't know that outside of your, major Western religions that you have much of this type of issue. Like the problem of evil is not as problematic because you are not beholden to a single just and merciful God. That seems to be much more of a Western issue. Anyway, and so yeah, problem of evil may not even impact upon entire classes of religion, because certainly, like Buddhism, you have the Theravadins who are right, and you have the Mahayanas, which enjoy being wrong all the time. I'm not kidding. You Mahayans, you need to seriously... You Mahayans think you're so much better than the Hainayans? Like, really? Really? I mean, we have Dharmayutta Nikai, and like you're walking around like, all right, I'm sorry, I get a little upset because you don't even care about the words of the elders. I mean, anyway, regardless, pretending to be Buddhism talking to itself. Like, and don't get me started on you nutsos in Tibet, thinking you have a extra guy that we don't, who is already like fully living and incarnated. I don't know about your nonsense. Anyway, so yeah, it's seems to be much more applicable if you have a concept of a just and loving God in your religion. So, yeah, the just and loving God, if he doesn't take care of evil, then isn't that a problem? Well, the answers to that question present themselves as theodicy, as theodicies are they are answers to the problem of evil. They are responses which provide space, continued space for belief. They are a very specific form of apologetic, which if you did not know, and if you're one of my students, then it's 100% likely that you don't. An apologetic is a defense taken on behalf of a particular stance that is believed to be, by the person providing the apologetic, believed to be under attack. So if you have a belief that is under attack, you provide an argument based in logic, based in philosophy, based in extensions from scientific argument, or whatever it may happen to be, but you provide a way for there to be continued faith in an idea that is under attack. So theodicies, which are answers to the problem of evil, are a specific form of apologetic. They are a specific form of addressing an attack on a belief system built on the existence of a just and loving God. So these answers are such things. Anyway, I am going to be linking to oh, that's bad. Anyway, Yeah, I'm going to have up on my other screen because I have two screens because I'm living large. Living the American dream. A chicken in every pot and two monitor setups for every home gamer who has too much time on his hands. It's talking about theodicies while playing Minecraft. Anyway, what I do makes no sense. You should not be watching this. You should be ashamed of yourself. Uh, anyway, yes, definitely reconsider all of your life choices. Uh, but don't forget to like and subscribe. Uh, uh, very funny to myself. Hopefully, only to myself, as we have discussed. There is no warrant for this. Um, so, yeah, my behavior unwarrantable. Unwarranted. Unwarranting. Not under warranty. Having a warrant for its arrest. Anyway, so, yeah, problem of evil. Okay, so, one of the, interesting, yeah, the, let's see, oh, oh, yeah, interesting. That it does not make sense to assume that there are greater goods that justify the evil's presence in the world unless we know what they are. Without a knowledge of what the greater goods could be, one can, yeah, interesting, yeah. So yeah, if you could take an ambiguous position toward the greater good being served by the existence of evil, and the greater good being served in ways which cannot by us mere mortals be known, that therefore we have sidestepped the question entirely, uh, and cannot be held liable for your, oh, what about the fact that evil exists? And it's like, well, we don't know. God knows. Bye. Like, uh, yeah, that's pretty much that. We don't know. God knows. Bye. Sorry, Jessica. See you next week. Don't wear that same outfit. I didn't tell you, but it doesn't match. Anyway. Anyway, regardless. So, yeah. Let me pull up. There was another thing I was looking at. The types. Uh, 3. Oh, yes. Yeah. Predestination, dualism, and karma. Yeah, okay. Those certainly are 3 interesting, yeah. So, predestination, dualism, and karma. So, predestination is not a commonly held view in most of Christianity. You don't find Calvinists take that position. And Calvinists are, if I am understanding correctly, I believe I've been told by those in the know that Calvinists in the United States are dwindling, in favor of more, not evangelical, what is the other one? Pentecostal type leanings. Anyway, but the let's see, where is that molten? Oh, molten stone pops. I don't want molten stone. Anyway. So, yeah, predestination is the idea that, like, what is happening was predestined. It was, uh, it was determined beforehand that this was the destiny. Wait, this way? It's this way? I don't see it. Okay. Anyway, just trying to find out where the molten stone is so I know when to be ready with gravel and sand. Because I do it with gravel and sand. A lot of people tell me to do it with water, but I don't want to go through that many diamond pickaxes, so. And how many nether portals do you think I need? Because occasionally I talk about Minecraft while I'm playing Minecraft and not just, the Odysseys. So, predestination, that all is as it has been destined to be. All actions, all states of being in the world are as they have been predestined to be. Which predestination, I would argue, is really contradictory with the concept of a just and loving God, because predestination does not allow for individual growth, individual choice. It takes a very harsh view that, like, humanity is what it is, and you're just going to have to deal with that. So, yeah, it's, so with predestination, and I know that I am the someone who believes in it could come and perhaps disabuse me of these notions, but predestination, if you have things happen like the Holocaust, for example, then it seems to become, not just God's will, which is problematic enough, that, like, God wanted the, for the Holocaust to happen, that it was important to him that it happened. And obviously there could be apologetics for that, but I just really, it makes me feel icky inside. Maybe it's just me experiencing cognitive dissonance, and I'm willing to accept that as a possible explanation. But, like, that God would take our choice and put himself solely in the driver's seat, making, like, if it's predestined, then it has been set in motion ahead of time, intentionally, with intent, that evil should exist and suffering should exist. And, and then you could argue, like, well, there must be a greater good, a better reason why this happens, but we mortals, we can't know. Bye. Like, no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I am awarding no points to the, like, it's probably something we don't know. Like, well, if you don't have a better answer than that, then it's definitely something you don't know. I'm sorry. Sorry to get so snarky on you, but, like, improve your answer, please. That is not sufficient. Anyway, so, yeah, predestination is just, like, it seems lazy to me. Like, it's just God wanted it that way. Leibniz was a very smart man. Actually, he was a decently smart man. He's probably a lot smarter than I am, but I get to make fun of him because my favorite book makes fun of him. Um, anyway, so yeah, that's your predestination. That, God made it so that this had to happen, so the evil in the world had to occur the way that it did because God made it. But then again, like, if it is evil and it was created intentionally by God to be foisted on mankind, that seems evil. But then again, hey, bro, you can't define your concept of evil upon God. And it's like, well, but if he just, allows for growing racism and the mass slaughter of lots of people that he had formerly said were chosen, like, ouch. That was your plan? Like, that's what you decided to do? That's what you decided would be good? Which, that brings into question the, like, well, everything bad happens for a reason, nothing. God don't make no mistakes. He don't make no mistakes. So everything that happens for a reason. But that is said with a complete lack of evidence. The problem with that is that, like, what reason does it happen for? Well, some unknowable reason that, only God must know. And it seems once again that under that circumstance that, God not only allowed it but caused it, and potentially not only caused it but delighted in it because it felt so right at the time to God to do that. Yes, this kitty is very horny. We have an appointment set. She is finally going to get fixed, but she's drooling. Ugh. She really wants me to touch her in inappropriate ways, and I am married, kitty. I am married. Anyway, so yes, problem of evil and issues thereof. Yeah, if God not only caused it but delighted in it and was like, yeah, this is my jam. This is how I do. Like, this is the thing that it should be said that I'm all about. Like, if there was a bag and this was in it, I'd be like, hey, that's my bag. Where'd you get my bag? Anyway, so, yeah. If God delights in the, prevalence of very, very terrible things happening to people who did not earn them, the good people that bad things happen to, well, then it makes it seem like the good people are ultimately much more good than God himself would be under such a circumstance. And of course, that is my own moral judgment, but I think that intentionally inflicting suffering on on beings that you have created is it's cruel. But then again, like, here's how you argue from God's omniscience. And this one, of course, you have to take into, account the idea that, like, is God actually omniscient? We talked about, like, well, does he know about the evil? Because, if he's not capable of knowing about the evil... Oh, she fell off. She was so horned up, she fell off the pedestal. We have a little kitty pedestal right next to our computers. Anyway, but is a God who knows um, from whence cometh evil, and is not willing to do anything about it. Is that God moral? Uh, but if he knows about it and is incapable, is that God omnipotent and worthy of being called a God? Or is that just a guy named Steve who lives in Cleveland? Anyway, you ask him what he does for a living. It's steam cleaning. I don't know why I am the way I am. Actually, I do. It's because I'm having a good weekend. Woo. Anyway, so, yeah, if God knows about it and is incapable, then he's not a God worth our notice. And if he knows about it and refuses to do anything, is he moral? So, yeah, let's look at some others because, always, from Theodicy rises Theodicy. Let's see, skeptical theism. Oh, ooh, ha 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 ha. Okay. Uh, I'm going to have to read from this one very specifically, but it's the idea that God is lessening an impact, that evil is a force in the universe which exists external to God, and therefore arguably not created by him. So that's a plus if you can assume that evil is not created by God, because under the the predestination, then God would have to have created it, because if he orders our destiny and destines that part of it be dealing with evil, then he made the evil that happened. That's pretty clear path from one to the other. and may in fact delight that evil is taking place, because then it carries out the destiny. And if that's what he's really about, is the carrying out of destiny, then which is what predestination argues, is that God just makes what has to happen happen, therefore he must do it with some sense that this is what's gotta happen. We're feeling good about this because this is what has to happen. Can't be anything other than this. This is what it has to be. Anyway, yeah, this seems to me, and I can see how you could argue against this pretty easily. I would tell you how many flaws in this argument are appearing in my mind right now, but I won't tell you what they are, because I don't give comfort to the enemy. And if you don't agree with me, you are my enemy. Just kidding. I'm not so overtly polarized. Anyway, but yeah, the skeptical theism approach is to say that God is avoiding a greater evil that exists external to him by allowing a small evil to take place. And then it said something about a rape of a child, and I was like, I don't like, rape or murder. Thus, a rape or murder of an innocent child is defended as having a God's purpose that a human being may not comprehend, but which may lead to a lesser evil or greater good. So I would think that subsumed, sublimated in, baked in, put inside that is the idea that, like, um, that we are intended to learn from those types of things that we experience. That, like, um, you know, that God gives us trials so that we may learn from them. But I would argue, okay, a child's murder or rape, like, let's say that there's a child murdered or raped, which is the only thing that would make this example work at all. Because otherwise, what am I even talking about? We're talking about this passage that I just read. So if I don't address the content of the passage, then I'm not talking about the passage. Anyway, so the murder or rape of a child. That is one of the most horrific things that most people can even imagine. You don't want to support a thing like the rape or murder of a child, certainly, because that is an awful stance to take. Nobody wants to be like, oh, the rape or murder of this child is not only an inevitability that it was bound to happen eventually, but that it is a necessity that, like, if it doesn't happen, then what a shame that the rape or murder of this child didn't happen. Who would want to live in a world where innocent children are not being raped? Who would want to live in such a hellish afterscape? Anyway. Yeah. So, but the idea is that you are doing one of two things. That you are bringing about a greater good or avoiding a greater evil. Which, okay, let's say that you are avoiding a greater evil by allowing a child to be raped or murdered. Okay, what greater evil? Like, I know that we could talk about evil being relative because, to steal someone's bike is, this is not a good thing, but it is not on par with, murdering someone's entire family and, like, desecrating the corpses and, doing it while the victims or while the person that you are attempting to offend is sitting there watching this happen to their family. Like, why am I thinking of such horrifically brutal things? Anyway, horrifically brutal thing happens. But there is some greater good achieved by its mere existence. Because if it was not necessarily for the terrible thing to exist, then that's the whole argument. Then it would not be necessary for this then it makes it not necessary for this terrible thing to exist. But I try to imagine things that are easily arguable as, worse than having a child raped or murdered. Not killed in an accident and not, bullied at school, but raped or murdered. The two worst things that could happen to most people in their own imagination and perhaps in reality. Like, what? Like, are you going to say that you are allowing a child to be raped to prevent genocide? Because, number one, I would like to see the connection between the two. Like, this guy was so in need of the companionship of underage children that he, uh, you know, was going to murder everyone unless he was satiated with his lust for young flesh. Like, this is disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting. Uh, but like, you have to be able to say that kind of a thing if you were going to make the argument that, like, well, this would be worse, wouldn't it, if this happened? Yeah, because you have to be able to imagine that there is a worse that could happen, a worse than a child being raped and murdered. Like, you can't have an argument about there being a worse without there being a worse. And, like, what even is worse? Genocide, probably, because it happens to a lot more people. It's terrible things happening to a lot more people. I don't know. Perhaps I do not have an accurate terrible thing metric. And I apologize if I don't. It's growing later, and I have no idea how long this episode has been happening for. Yeah, scholars criticize it as devaluing the suffering. Yeah, and not addressing the premise that God is all benevolent and should be able to stop all suffering and evil rather than playing a balancing act. Yeah, that's you make a good point. Lumenlearning.com. Anyway, that sounds, I don't know, sometimes you hear names like that and it sounds like, ugh, what is this, the freaking landmark forum? Like, am I being, brought into a cult? Anyway, so yeah, greater good responses, to do omnipotence paradoxes. Evil persists in the presence of an all-powerful God. It raises the question of his omnipotence, as I said it did. Yeah, greater good responses. Okay, but. All right. This is a very common one that you hear, which is free will. The idea that, like, God did not create the evil in the world, and he did not want the evil in the world, but free will exists, and because free will exists, then people choose to do evil in complete disregard of God's original intent, and that's the way it goes. Oh, it is done. Anyway, but I can think of a number of problems with this idea because, sorry. Yeah, like, the number one problem is that this idea of free will, it only covers issues which arise from the overt choice or the fallout of choice, if you wish to go to its fullest extension, the results of the choices of humans. Hello, doggies. Oh, I've got my sword. I should go kill, like, several hundred cattle. But it'll get really loud, and it'll be really bad and terrible. And so I won't do that. I am experimenting with pumpkin flooring. So don't judge me. Anyway, so, meow. Oh, is it getting darker? I thought it was getting lighter. I thought I came out the lighter part of the morning, not the darker, or not the lighter part of the twilight. Makes me want to listen to Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Kudos to you if you know what that means. Anyway, but yeah, free will only causes the things which are caused by the choices of humans. So, like, at what point did, you know, children needlessly getting polio, or any amount of childhood cancer? Childhood cancer is one of the goddamn. Sorry, um, let's try not to swear. Although, you know what? Is that a swear? Because that's what God does the most. Like, in most theologies, most people are damned, and God is the one making that judgment call, and therefore God is doing the damning. Hence the, God damn it. And yeah, that's what God does more than God save it, like, God damn it way more. Now I just keep saying it, and it feels like I mean, I'm not going to monetize this, so I guess I don't have to worry. Like, someone calling it in and saying, like, he kept saying, God damn it. But if Mrs. Badger has to sit in a room where a student is listening to me play this, she would be very upset that I keep swearing. But I'm not swearing. I'm just making a reference to one of God's many pastimes. Anyway, regardless. So, does God have other pastimes, and is damning it a pastime? Anyway, so yeah. The free will argument does not cover children getting cancer. Like, children getting cancer, and then even worse, dying of cancer, like, is terrible. And you could say things like, well, it brought our family together in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise. And it's like, yeah, but is that a greater good? Like, what would have been the effect of your kid not getting cancer and you remaining, like, still probably a pretty solidly close family? Like, there's no control in your experiment here. There's no control group. Like, who here is not benefiting? So yeah. Free will, it's problematic. Because, like, it is, it sort of leans on the concept of man's tendency toward evil, which, like, if man has a tendency toward evil, please, it seems like a design flaw, please contact the manufacturer. Oh no. Oh, it went away. All right. Cool. That probably means there's going to be more soon. Anyway, but yeah, if mankind is causing these kinds of things through their choices, then is God able to stop mankind from making choices that impact others in such a negative way, like a child being raped or murdered? Let's go with that as a standard of measurement, because that's a terrible thing. And I'm not the one who brought it up. Apparently, it's this article. But they are citing from someone who brought it up as a, yeah, yep, yeah, yep. Let's see. Okay, the extension of free will defense. mighty non-human spirit, non-god supernatural beings, and fallen angels, whose free will. Oh, okay, okay. So it's a demonology. It's a, there's an existence of, beings with free will who are inherently evil. And, given the origin of the ultimate evil in the universe in the Bible, which is that he was Lucifer, a son of the morning, that he rejected the free will approach that God was offering and said, I'll just make it happen for everybody. It's going to be totalitarian, but we are going to get everyone back. And God said, no, that seems like a terrible way to go. I'm going to go with this one with Jesus, where he will take upon himself the sins of the world and then will die a terrible death, and that'll pay for like everybody. That's your free ticket in. That's your way back, because we're just going to assume that you're gonna mess up, that you're not gonna the inherent nature of mankind is to be flawed, and that because you are flawed, you are going to mess up, and because you're going to mess up, you need someone to redeem you, hence a redeemer. But like, it calls into question the omnipotence of God, and because Lucifer, as a son of the morning, as an early child, an early iteration of a being created by this supposedly all powerful and all benevolent. You are kitty. I don't know if you can hear that in the microphone, but that kitty is like begging for male companionship. Well, male kitty companionship. Anyway, so yeah. So the origin of Satan, the devil, is that he's fallen. He is, was once with God, and through a non-acceptance of God's intent and God's will, that he was, then therefore forever punished, which, by the way, forever punishment seems like as ungodly a thing as I can think of. Because like, let's say that you commit a sin that's not really that big a deal, but there's no delineation, like God can tolerate no sin. He's not all about it. But like, let's say that you stole a candy bar that did not belong to you, right? Now, God doesn't allow the least amount of sin. Like, any amount of sin that has not been, like, any amount of sin is unacceptable. So you gotta, like, wash it off in that Redeemer blood and get that Jesus in you, and, like, say the thing and have the thing, and then you're cool. Is your ticket in. It's your, I've got a golden ticket. I've got a piece of sunshine in my hand. 'Cause I've got a golden ticket. I've got it. Anyway. It's like, very much, if no one told you, these theodicies are very much like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Which is interesting that the first version of it focuses on Willy Wonka and not Charlie. But interestingly, more interestingly, the you know, Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory focuses more on the character of Charlie, and the what's his name? Nightmare Before Christmas. What's his face? Anyway, why can't I think of his name? It's gonna bother me if I don't look it up. Tim Burton. Okay. Yeah, the Tim Burton version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, with the one with Johnny Depp, focuses way more on the character of Willy Wonka than it does on the character of Charlie. As a matter of fact, I remember very little about the character of Charlie from that version. But yeah, those names should be switched. I'm just saying, because when we're talking about your Chocolate Factory videos, and we are, and remember that part in the opening credits where it shows how they make Hershey's Kisses, and you're like, oh, that makes me want Hershey's Kisses. I would like some of those right now. I would like some of those right now. I wouldn't mind. I like the Hugs, though. They got white chocolate. Anyway, so, yeah, I don't know how I got on Hershey's Kisses. But, yeah, that, you know, the origin of these evil beings with their own free will is that God created them too. I mean, that's at least the origin for, you know, for Satan, for the big guy. Why would that not be the origin for the little guys? I mean, maybe you could argue for the existence of demons which predate Satan himself. I don't know. I guess I don't. Wait, real quick. Let me do some quick math. How many angels can dance on the head of a pin? See, we're getting into theological concepts that have nothing to do with anything that I care about. Anyway, so yeah. Wait, I am not on the right page over here, so I can do the thing. Okay. Ooh, interesting. The free creatures is case of caged domesticated farm animals who are not free, and many of whom have historically experienced evils and suffering. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, soul making or Iranian. I'm probably mispronouncing that wildly. It's my first time saying that word out loud. Soul making or Iranian. Soul making Theodicy, named for Irenaeus. That looks like it's Irenaeus. I may have pronounced that correctly. Evil and suffering are necessary for spiritual growth. There it is. That's the one. And this one just seems perverse to so many people for whom it is not a, you know, necessary part of the belief system. You know, that like, oh, all bad things, all things happen for a reason. And you know, like your 7-year-old child died of cancer, which there multiple people in the world can say that sentence, you know, like that, hey, my 7-year-old child died of cancer. The fact that there are multiple people in the world, that's just making me very sad. I'm thinking about my kids. Um, but the fact that there are people in the world who can say that and have it accurately describe their situation seems to indicate the existence of a very, very disturbing evil in the world. That it's not just like, oh, sometimes your bike gets stolen, and how does that? How could you have a just and loving God when you go outside, hop on your sweet bike that's got shocks, pegs, lucky? Anyway, you go outside to hop on your, I believe it's a sledgehammer. I believe that's what it is. Anyway, you go outside to hop on your sledgehammer with its shocks and its pegs. You are lucky. Anyway, and you go to hop on it, and it's gone. Totally gone. No bike. Yes, bike theft is bad, but you can learn, like, the say that happens to you, and there's like a greater lesson that you can take from it, and that lesson is not like, hey, some people in the world are just jerks, take bikes, but the greater lesson that you learn is like, perhaps someone had a greater need than you did, and you have to be willing to allow for others' needs to come before your own, even if it is an inconvenience for yourself. And you could argue that you're a better person because that's what I learned when I had my bike stolen. But it's a problem of degree because, you know, the, you know, so let's say that a child dies of, dies young, 7 years old, dies of cancer. So how much did that child learn from that experience? Like, you may have learned that, like, cherish every moment that you have, which that's good advice. Cherish the moments you have. You're only alive once, far as we know, far as we're able to prove with empirical data. Anyway, so yeah. Yeah, like you, if your child has, if your child dies of cancer and you learn to be a better person and to cherish the scant time that you have with the people that you love, good. Like I'm not going to sit here and say like that's not a good lesson to learn, but but it does beg two questions. Number one, how much could that 7-year-old have learned versus how much did they have to suffer in a way that did not directly benefit their life? And, not that everything in life has to directly benefit you. Like, I don't believe everything in life has to directly benefit you. But, if you're taking this view of evil, then ultimately, yes, everything must benefit you in some way, no matter how terrible it is. It must eventually come around to like, hey, I'm glad that happened because what I learned was, that's what that implies. And so, I feel like it really minimizes the suffering of the 7-year-old who died of cancer. Number one, because like for you to learn a lesson that you could also learn from like, breaking your own foot and being like, oh, pain and suffering, but out of pain and suffering, I learned, like, yeah, less pain and suffering all around, and, like, allow the person experiencing the pain and suffering to survive it, and not die slowly of cancer. Uh, so it would seem like there are ways to do that in a more, in a less evil way. Um, it is a problem of evil because allowing a child who has, like, here's the funny thing about life is that we really do the math on people and the value of their remaining years. We do. And so someone, take someone my age, in early 40s, um, my life is worth less than that of an 18-year-old. And I know that's very morbid to say that. Like, it's, it's, people don't want to stop and think about, like, well, to society, my life is worth less than, such and such. Um, or, worth less than people of this age. But it is true. That is how we handle it because, you know, I have lived long enough to have experienced a lot and to have married well, had children, seen them grow to a certain age, knowing that they are good and decent people. Um, like I've experienced some pretty sweet things in life, and most of the good things that you would want a person to experience before death, the loving embrace of a caring partner, um the happiness of finding joy in one's career, the things um that people experience when they live for as long, that can experience, don't always experience, but can experience. And so if someone dies young, then they are guaranteed to not experience, the satisfaction of a successful, healthy, long-term relationship. Like, of course they're not, because my relationship is older than they are when they die. So, anyway, uh, that's quite sad to think about, but meh. So, like, my life is worth less than a young person's because there are things that we want them to experience that they have not experienced, which I have experienced. And how much more is my life going to hold? How much more good am I going to do? How much more am I going to benefit my friends and family with my presence versus, living a really long time and, potentially being a burden on those same people. Uh, so, yeah, I mean, if I died, it might not be all bad, uh, honestly. If I died at my current age, I will die eventually, you know. So, dying before I, need people to handle basic bodily functions that I can barely handle anymore. Like, that type of age, you start to be a burden on others, and you might not be very happy with the quality of life yourself, and therefore your continued existence may not be such a blessing. Uh, Certainly not for everyone. Um, anyway, so yeah, like, um, but yeah, we value the life of an 18-year-old who, like, life is stretched out ahead of him, and he's just got to reach out and grab it. He can be what he wants to be. He can go off to college and major in what he wants, and he can become something where he makes a lot more money than I do as a teacher. Certainly that's not hard. uh Teacher in Arizona. Oh, kitty. Boo. Oh man. Oh, that is rank. Ugh. Anyway, but like, they can find something where they're making more than a teacher in Arizona, but it's also their passion, something that they uh love to do. Like, that is, you would hope that people would be able to find that in life. um and to a certain extent, I have that. I've had that. it's, I am quite passionate about what I do for a living, and I'm very happy with it. Oh, kitty, be quiet. We we oh, she's so loud and obnoxious. Anyway, but yeah. So yeah, my life, I have experienced these things. Uh, a very young adult who has not experienced these things. Like, if they die, it's tragic because we would have wanted them to have the parts of life that they were deprived of. Whereas I am significantly less deprived at this point. I've passed a lot of the big milestones. I have you know accomplished a lot of the major accomplishments on a personal level in terms of personal relationship and family type achievement. Uh, so yeah. If I were to clock out while I am making this recording, and people get very upset when I say things like that, where they're like, "Are you suicidal?" No, I'm not suicidal. I have been taking my medication, and it's not like I was really suicidal before. I was just very depressed. Um. Anyway, not all depressed people are suicidal, but all suicidal people are depressed. Well, but the ones you really need to worry about are the ones who are not depressed because they actually carry it out. Because if you're depressed, ironically, you can't get off the couch to end your own life because you're too depressed. This is common knowledge in psychology. Any psychologist will tell you that with people who struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts, that they are a greater risk for suicide when they are not in the valleys of depression, but when they are in the peaks of relative happiness. Because when they're in that state, then they are obviously still capable of contemplating the termination of their own life, but also uh, yeah, not only capable of contemplating it, but capable, because they're always capable of contemplating it, but capable of carrying it out. It's a good diamond haul right now. Solid. Anyway. Anyway, so yeah, a 7-year-old's life is worth more than mine. I know it's not a comfortable admission, but it is. A young kid like that, their life is viewed as having greater value, because if I were to die, sure, it would be sad, wouldn't be, I don't know that it would be anyone's happiest day, or that they would be super happy because I was dead. I don't know that I've, lived well enough to have such enemies. Perhaps that is one of my greater flaws, is not drawing the ire of more enemies. Anyway, I'll work on that. I'll try and really piss some people off. So that, like, when I die, people can be like, what was it? Was it his enemy? No, but anyway, so a 7-year-old has more potential in their life left than I do. The potential that I do things any greater than I have already done thus far in my life, limited to say the least. Most likely, for me in my life, what's done is done. Or that is the perception, and that's why a 7-year-old's life is worth more than mine. Look, I don't have to, like, sit here and sell you on this idea the whole time. I'm just going to state it as fact and move on. Like, a 7-year-old's life is worth more than mine. You don't have to be happy about it. You just have to acknowledge that it's true. And so, therefore, if a person like myself... Oh, God, no, let's not talk about my children. It makes me too sad. Let's say... Alright, I'm thinking of a person. I won't say who it is out loud because this very nearly happened. Could have easily happened. Not a happy thought. Anyway, so if this person had lost a child... God, I really shouldn't talk about this, but it could have happened today. It really weirds me out. Anyway, so if this person had lost their child who was very young and has not experienced a lot of life, if then this person, the parent who loses this child, if they then go on to learn to really appreciate things and to really, spread the good news and spread joy and happiness to other people around them and really make the world a better place and just make it more awesome and really do some things that that make the world better and all of this, right? Okay, so the person is my age and they go on to do many great and wonderful things. Awesome. Cool. I'm not gonna say that that's bad. I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh, but you did it for different reasons than I would have done it. Like, okay, whatever. Who cares? Who cares? Let's not get all caught up on what the reasons were. But what about the child? What about the child? Because certainly you're not going to argue that they don't exist, and certainly you're not going to argue that they don't have a stake in their own well-being. They certainly do, whether or not they're able to articulate their self-interest in their continued well-being. They certainly have a stake in it. And if presented with a choice between painful death or continued well-being, would be like, continued well-being, please. I didn't know either of those words before today, but if that could be the thing that I have instead of my own death today, like, yeah, let's go ahead and get that deal done. Let's sign the paperwork and make it so. Um, yeah. So if you were to provide the choice, the child would decline on the death. More than likely. Uh, because even a child of that age would be able to understand, like, oh, death lasts forever, and like it's perhaps best that not happen to me right now when I have so much left to experience. Anyway, yeah, it's really evil to place so much more emphasis on the life of someone who is older than the child, because certainly if it's someone younger than the child, then they are not the one learning the lesson and then carrying on from that point forward. Because if you're younger than the child, are you really capable of being that type of self-aware in the, carrying out of decisions in your life? So, like, from the death of a child, what great lesson can be learned by people whose lives are, according to the judgments of our own society, worth less than the child who died? It's a conundrum. It's a problem. Ah, the afterlife. Uh, oh, we'll talk about a few other ones that I'm going to dismiss handily. Evil as the absence of good. Like, oh, it's just the good wasn't there. So because the good wasn't there, that's why we perceive it as evil. And that just seems like trickery. Uh, it just seems like verbal trickery. Um, because uh, it just it doesn't really cover the concept of injustice and, like, absence of good. Okay, but what about the fact that the thing that happening is truly unjust? Because we realize that injustices do, as a matter of fact, occur within our universe, and injustices are bad. And if they're bad, then they're evil. They're not good. They're not the sort of thing that a, kind and merciful God would want to be foisted on people who don't deserve it. Um, yeah, absence of good. I have a problem with that. A serious problem with that, because it really doesn't explain the things which need the greatest explanation. Evil as illusory, um, that yeah, yeah, suffering and disease only appear to be real, but are illusions. Oh yeah, yeah. Tell that to a child dying of cancer. It's all I could do to withhold every swear word that I know. Hidden reasons. Oh, God's ways are higher than your ways, and you may not know. Uh, the fog, the profoundly hidden outweighing goods. That's a fun. Previous lives and karma. Now, this is a fun one because, like, as I was saying earlier, I don't really think that. Um, wait, the fog. Oh, previous lives and karma. Yeah, I really don't think that Buddhism even needs a response to the problem of evil, because it does not have baked within it the concept of a just and merciful God. It's based in the idea that the circumstance in which man is trapped is one that requires an escape. It requires like getting out. Like that's the fun thing about Buddhism is that a lot of like Broheim yoga types, Broheim. Okay, Broheim. So Buddhism is like makes you like one with everything, Broheim. So like you feel amazing, bro. It's like really, it's really, and it's like really intense, man. It's one of the most intense things you've ever felt. It's like, all right, all right, all right. It's a little piece of all right over there. You know what I'm saying? It's good. It's a slice of the real good. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's right. Anyway, regardless, I don't know why I'm doing this. Um, but yeah, the final one that is wildly flawed in my estimation is the afterlife. You know, so like yeah, it's one thing to say like, oh, karma karma will provide a balance and karma will do it over successive lives. You know, like you will be reborn into a life of pain and suffering and terrible existence, um because you did terrible things in a previous life, and so you'll be born as a 7-year-old who gets cancer because in a past life you did a terrible thing. Well, this is tying an unfalsifiable claim to a falsifiable one, namely, like, okay, does this kid have cancer or not? Yes, this kid has cancer. Okay, so uh, what are we to say about it? Like, unsupportable things, like things that you cannot possibly prove wrong. Like that in a past life. Okay, how do we know which one? You can't. You have to take it on faith. It's a matter of faith. Just know that past lives totally exist, and we're talking about this person's past life. Their future life, you know, if they do terrible things now, past life, if they did, you know, like uh, Adolf Hitler should have already had, under this idea, should have already had a life which was full of pain and suffering, you know, because, and potentially multiple lives full of pain and suffering. And it's like, okay, well, I can't disprove the idea that that happens. Um, you know, and it's certainly a compelling idea in that, like, there's a balance, but, you know, that, like, you receive blessing, you know, you receive bon, but you can also receive bab if you are a bad person, right? But it's not necessary. It's not a necessary answer to a question that holds a lot of weight for Buddhists, because they are coming in saying the system is broken. You know, it's not the Broheim, like, oh, you just become one with everything, Broheim. Like, this is totally good. It's that you are born into a broken system that has been causing you to be reborn again and again and again and again. And the way out is to recognize the truths that that the Buddha himself found. And if you follow those things, you know, if you follow the Eightfold Path, then in the end, you will cease to exist. And that ceasing to exist will be a blissful rest to your own existence, or from your own existence. You'll be resting from existence. Because to exist is to suffer. And frankly, that's a really good explanation for the existence of suffering, is that, like, it's baked in. It just happens because it has to happen. Like, it's here. Like, existence itself is suffering, and your whole point is to be a Mr. Meeseeks and to try to not exist anymore. Because continued existence is painful. You know, you're born potentially infinite number of times, and every time life is disappointing and painful, and you eventually die, you know, a death that is more than likely not very fun or pleasant. You go through a number of unpleasant things in life, and yes, there are pleasant ones as well, but, like, ultimately, if you're doing this again and again and again and again and again, you know, like, imagine that you're sentenced to watch a movie that has some good parts and some bad parts for the rest of eternity. Like, okay, over time that is going to feel very tedious because there are bad parts. And, you know, you don't want that. Like, over time you're going to really mind it. Because it's the only thing you have. Anyway, so here's my final problem, and then I really need to close this out. My final problem is this. I have never heard of a concept of the afterlife that made me want to continue living in some form after I die. I've never heard it, and I've heard a lot of them. I've heard, you know, Mormons say that you can become a god and, you know, create your own planets and your own children and save them the same way that God saved you. Like, ooh, that actually sounds like a pretty sweet gig. Like, all right. But my main problem with all of it is, like, okay, what about year 3,000,000,001 of your own existence? Coincidentally, you really have to think about how big a billion is. If you started counting one number per second from the moment you were born until you reached a billion, it would take you 35 years to do it. 35 years of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, like, just counting at a steady cadence like that. You know, and when you get to the really big numbers, not messing up that count, just being like, you know, 357,425,003. 350, like, oh god. I didn't even know. I didn't even listen to what I said, and so it may have been mathematically incorrect. Who knows? Anyway, the fact of the matter is that I've never, like, okay, becoming a god, like, 3 billion years on of me creating people, some of whom are like, I don't believe in you. Because that seems to be one of the crosses that God has to bear. Is children not believing, and, like, so if I'm in year 3,000,000,007 and it's like I create some children on a planet and they're like, we don't believe in you, I'd be like, you know what? Is a flood the right answer? Like, should I just flood this place out? Because it's starting to seem like maybe that's it. Maybe I just solved it. But no, like the afterlife never seems like a place that I would want to go. It doesn't. Like, obviously, hell is not supposed to be a place that you want to go. So we're going to skip that. Because, like, of course it's supposed to be miserable. Like, duh. But, like, concepts of heaven that, like, we will just stand around uh, praising God forever. Like, potentially in joyful song, potentially in, in speech. Um, I dare you to just talk about nothing else but how good God is for an hour. 1 hour. And then take how you feel at the end of that hour and multiply it by a lot, because you're going to be doing it for 3 billion in 7 years. So, how many hours in a year? I know there's 525,600 minutes for exactly the reason you think. Yeah, the later I get in these things, the less I'm Minecrafting. Why was that burning? Oh. What? Why is there an Enderman in my mine? Where did he come from? And why am I attacking him? Oh, this is really scary. Like, when he is the exact that was terrifying. Normally I fight them either in the open or like out of a nook or cranny that the Enderman can't get into. That is the first mob spawn that I've had other than slimes. Obviously, I don't mind slime spawning. Like, I actually like slimes because I like making slime blocks and then jumping off high places onto them. But yeah, like, where is it not bright enough that he was able to spawn? I don't know. Interesting. Does he spawn like over here? Anyway. Interesting. Yeah, so like praising God forever as an afterlife sounds terrible. You know, I've heard ones where it's like you get to be with your family and, all your pets. And pets like some tortoises, some lizards that we lost. Like, cool. Like, I love tortoises and I love lizards. Oh, and a cat. That'd be Brighty. Like, alright, I can deal with, like, hanging with pets for a really long time. A really long time, but we'll discuss, like, the other part of that in a second. Okay, why is this wall dark? Is that where he spawned? Anyway, yeah, but like pets, getting all your pets and being able to just chill with your pets. Oh, I was missing a torch there. That was not spaced properly. Okay, so I got a legitimate mob spawn. Okay. That makes way more sense. Yeah, so sitting around praising God forever doesn't sound great. And then the, like, all of your pets and all of your family. And it's like, I have a hard time with some of my family now. Like, and my family and I get along, like, we really do. Like, we actually, have a nice time together for the most part. But like there are several problems with this. Like, number one is that, like, uh, let's say that I am in the afterlife and I gather my family together, right? Because I am me. And so I get my wife and I get my 2 children together. Okay. So all of a sudden, because I've gathered my wife and my 2 children with me, my parents and my wife's parents don't have one of their children. So they are missing out on a full family, which, like, if you're actually happy with your family, which we're going to assume for this, which for a lot of people may be a huge assumption. Like, are you really actually happy with your family? And so, yeah, I'm happy with my family, but, like, if I'm with my wife, then my parents are not with one of their children. And as a matter of fact, they're not with most of their children, because most of us have, spouses and children of our own. And then, for the grandparents, it gets even more problematic because they will have multiple children and also grandchildren, and grandparents love grandchildren. So, like, their grandchildren are going to be gathered together with the families of the people who have children. That's how that's going to happen. And the children are going to be gathered together in their own families with their children, which are the same as the grandchildren, same people. So, how do you have a family that is together in an afterlife? Because if everybody's there, then you have this infinite regression of family. And it just turns into, like, well, everybody's in the same place at the same time because you couldn't be otherwise. Because if you tried to separate it into families, like, where do you start? Because you could say immediate family only, but as soon as you have more than one generation, that idea is out the window. Anyways, so the idea of an afterlife where you're just with family, I don't understand how that's even possible. Like, I really don't. Yeah, don't get the one about, just sitting around praising God. Like, and mainly, here is my main problem with an afterlife. And it is, Peter Pan's ultimate problem with Neverland is that, if there is no death, if there is no end, then how can you be ultimately satisfied? Like, because, to merely exist and just exist forever gets boring. Like, imagine yourself as you are right now, doing whatever you're doing. Actually, if you're watching this video, imagine yourself doing this exact same thing, but times 3 billion. Like, does that sound like paradise to you? Does that sound super awesome? Like, you just sitting and watching this video, bored look on your face. Like, you've made it all the way to this part, and, like, how did you even do that? So take that, multiply it by 3 billion, and then be like, yeah, totally. Like, this is what it's all about. Paradise. Like, this is awesome. Like, no, at that point, it seems to me, and this is like Sartre's play No Exit, it seems to me that it's more similar to a hell than it is to a heaven. Just the continued existence. Like, I need to have an existence that ends because I don't know if I can be happy if it doesn't. And I'm not kidding. Like, I don't know if I can be happy at all, either now or later, if there is no end to this. Anyway, so yeah, that is very much how I feel about it. And so the concept of like, oh, well, it's all made better in the afterlife, but my every approach to every version of the afterlife is like, okay, Kitty, don't tear up that chair. It's a nice chair. But my response to every version of the afterlife is like, well, I wouldn't want to do that for 3 billion years, which, when you're talking about eternity, 3 billion years is like, not even 2 seconds worth of the very beginning of the first order of infinity. Like, if you're in heaven, it's like I could do 3 billion standing on my head, like that. Because 3 billion, like, it's not an infinite amount. It is not an eternal life. It's just a really, really long life. But it's nowhere near infinite. And I can't imagine being satisfied with anything that I'm doing in my 300 billionth year of existence. Like, I could take up ventriloquism in my 3 billion and seventh. One is not a thing. Take up ventriloquism on my 3 billion and seventh year of existence. Learn how to talk without moving my lips, and learn how to make it look like a real puppet is talking. Yeah, I'm going to totally do that. Awesome. But, like, what am I going to do with all the other time? Like, I can't just sit around existing forever as some great reward, and all I can think to do is, like, become a ventriloquist. Like, at a certain point, it would have to be the option, because you have an infinite amount of time, but a seemingly finite number of things that you could do. But also, if the number of things you could do is infinite, because it's all good once you pass the test of, this mortal life, and then you get into the afterlife, and it's like, yeah, you killed it, you crushed that test. And so, like, all of a sudden, you get to do all kinds of extra cool things that regular people don't get to do. What would that be? And would it not get problematic over time? Just like everything else in life, that, like, yeah, sure, I could do this for 5 minutes, I could do this for an hour, but if I have to do this for 12 days, I've got an issue. Anyway, I just don't I don't see any of the theodicies as valid responses for, like, well, this is why evil has to exist. I think that, like, your ultimate approach is, well, you have to take some certain things on faith. I think that's it. I think there is no other sidestepping, no other equivocation, no other way around the problem of evil, other than to say, like, you just have to believe. It's a test of your faith just to even have such things. But, it is what it is. What a weird, weird episode. But nobody watches these, so problem of evil, we done solved it. There is no heaven. Actually, it's funny. In John Lennon's Imagine, which I may or may not have called Believe in another episode, John Lennon's Believe. Do you believe in imagining? Anyway, uh, but yeah, the lyric, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. Um, no hell below us, above us only sky. Like, these are lyrics from the song. Um, and people will sometimes want to sing this for religious services, and there is a changed version. It's like, imagine there's a heaven. It's easy if you try. It's all perfect and awesome and stuff. Like, they flip it around to be the exact opposite of John Lennon's intent. To be like, but we can perpetuate our continued belief system, right? And still like this song. It's like, I don't know. You do what you want. Like, be living how you be living, I guess. But you change the classic to, suit your uh, belief systems. That's weird. This kitty really, really wants me to pet her and stuff. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, like, there's not an afterlife that I've ever heard of that I would like to go to, and there's not an explanation for the existence of evil that I find compelling enough to show that there must be an ultimate good, because the best of them require you to take it on faith. The worst of them require you to bring in like three other explanations as attachments to form one mega explanation for the existence of evil. Anyway, yeah, it's a problem. I don't know how much of my video today had Minecraft in it. Like, I may have just been sitting here the whole time. Hopefully, it was at least semi entertaining. I say as if there's an audience. Hopefully, it wasn't too long. I say, knowing that it's probably over 2 hours. So, anyway, let's go back to the infinite regression multiverse, and let's go ahead and 3 hours. Yeah, enjoy that, people. All right, and stop.